In this chapter, we're going to introduce Java programming by writing the first program that most programmers write in a language, a program that displays Hello World on the screen. In this first lesson, we're going to see how to enter the program into the text editor. That's our first step. The first thing we want to do is open up a DOS prompt, get to your Documents folder, wherever your documents are stored, and then to make it easy to retrieve the programs that we work on, create a directory inside your Documents folder, or create a folder called Java. I'm doing it by typing md Java for make directory. Once you've done that, then you can change directories into that folder by typing cd Java for change directory. And that puts us in the Java folder. And I'm going to clear the screen to make sure that our screen is clear. Now we want to begin writing the program, so we have to create a file to store our program. Programs are stored in files, and then the compiler is run on that file. So we're going to do that by calling Notepad with the name of the file. Now let's spend a second and talk about how Java programs are named, or the files are named. They have to begin with a capital letter, and I'll explain why in a moment, and then they also have to have a .java extension. The compiler looks for that when you try to compile the program, and without it, the program won't compile. So, capital letter to start the file name, and a Java extension. Now we're ready to open the file, so just hit enter at this point and ask us if we want to create a new file, and we say yes. The first thing we type is the words public class and then the name of the file. This is actually the name of a class because every Java program is itself a class. And notice that my class name is the same as my file name, including the capital letter, and that's very important. Classes in Java have to begin with the capital letter. The capital W in world is not that important, but I like to separate my words with capital letters to make it easy to read a multi-word name. So that's why I capitalize the W, but the H has to be capitalized. Drop down to the next line and type an opening brace. The brace signifies that we're beginning the definition of the class, and we'll be talking a lot more about that. And then indent at least 3 spaces or 2 spaces. It doesn't really matter so much as long as you indent some. Then type the words public static void main, open parenthesis, capital S, string, open and close brackets, and then the word args. Just like that. Public static void main string args. Very quickly, I'll explain why we do this. The compiler is looking for a method called main. The compiler looks for that as the place to begin compiling the program. So every class at some point has to have a public static void main, or just a main method somewhere in it. All our program's going to do is print hello world, so we'll have the main method right here without anything else. Underneath that, put an opening curly brace. This brace signifies the beginning of what's called a block. All methods have blocks. The block is where the code that goes inside the method is contained. Drop down to the next line and indent from there, and then type the word system.out.print line, ln, not the whole word line, but we say print line because it makes more sense than saying print loon. It's hard to say. It doesn't make any sense. Open parenthesis, double quote, hello world, exclamation point, close double quote, close parenthesis, and then a semicolon. Let me explain a little bit about what we're doing here. We're wanting to print the phrase hello world to the screen. The screen, or the terminal, or the console, is represented by system.out. And as we go through the course, I'll explain more about what all that means. We have to tell that object, if you want to think of it as an object, what to do, and what we want to do is we want to print a line, and the line we want to print is hello world, and then we end that with a semicolon. I'll be explaining all this syntax quite a bit as we go through the course. We close the block with a closing curly brace, and then we close the class definition with another closing curly brace, and that finishes up the program, and that's all we have to write. And again, it's okay if you don't understand what every single piece of this means. We'll be discussing it a lot more throughout the course, but this is what we have to have a working program. Before we end this lesson, let's save the file. So we're going to click File Save, make sure it's saved, and now we're finished. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how to compile and run this program. Now that we've entered and saved our program, we're ready to try to compile it and run it. So to do that, bring your DOS window back up, make sure you're in the right directory where your Java program was saved, and type the command javac for the Java compiler, and then the name of your program, including the extension, helloworld.java. Then press enter. If no message comes back, then your program compiled successfully. If you did get an error, then you probably didn't type the program in exactly as I have it, so go back and check and compare your program to what I have here. We're going to cover errors in the next lesson, so don't worry too much about that, but make sure that your program looks exactly like mine. Then when you're sure of that and it does compile successfully, then we're ready to run the program. To do that, we call the virtual machine Java, which calls the JVM, or the Java Virtual Machine, along with the name of our program without the extension, just Java Hello World, and press enter. And you should see the phrase Hello World on your screen. Again, if you don't see that, then something happened entering the program, so go back and enter the program as I have it on the screen now, and then go back and recompile it with javac helloworld.java, and then run it with the virtual machine by typing Java Hello World. And again, you should see the phrase Hello World right after that. In the next lesson, I'm going to talk about how to deal with errors that you make, usually by typing something incorrectly. Mistakes are going to be part of every program, and now is probably a good time to at least introduce you to a couple of the kinds of mistakes that you can make when you're writing Java programs. So we're going to look at two of those today, leaving out semicolons and misspelling keywords. So let's start out with leaving out a semicolon. We only have one in our Hello World program, so let's take it out, and then we'll save the file, bring up our DOS window, compile Hello World again, and there's the error message that we get. Very straightforward and easy to understand, with an arrow that even points you and tells you where the semicolon was missing. So the error message says that in the program Hello World, at line 5, a semicolon was expected. And then it prints out the line and shows you an arrow where it is. So that's a very easy one to fix. When you see that, you simply go back to your program, add the semicolon in, save the file. We'll clear the screen just to make it easy to follow what we're doing. Recompile it, and it compiles fine, and we can go ahead and run it. Let's look at the other type of error you might make, which is misspelling a keyword, like print line. You might accidentally type a 1 instead of L there because they look very similar. So let's save that program. Now let's compile it. And the error message we get is a little bit more complex, but it makes a little bit of sense. It says, in helloworld.java, in line 5 again, cannot find symbol. All right, so that's what we're talking about when we say print line. Print line is considered a symbol. So then it tells you symbol method print 1 in. And so when you see that, it takes a little bit of experience, but then you realize, oh, that's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be print ln. So we'll go back and fix that, and then we save the program, and then it should compile and run. Let's do one more just to get the feel for this. Let's misspell system. So we'll do a file save, compile the program again. This time I'm going to use my up arrow key so I don't have to type the whole command. And here's a little bit different message. It says in helloworld.java in line 5, package, well, you can't even pronounce that. Citum does not exist. Well, again, with experience, you realize that you just misspelled system, so you go in and fix it. Save it, and then it compiles and runs correctly. Let's make an error in another place in the program just for some variety. Well, in fact, let's do something even different. This won't be a typo. This will be leaving something out, kind of like a semicolon. Let's leave out the opening brace for our main method and see what happens when we run that. So we save it, then we compile, scroll it up where we can see it a little bit better. And here it says in helloworld.java in line 3, semicolon expected. Now that's confusing. Again, it's going to take experience to learn that the semicolon is not the problem here because it's pointing at the end of the parenthesis, what's called the parameter list, and that's not where the semicolon goes. The problem is that we are missing the brace, the opening curly brace, and we have to put that in. So the bottom line for error messages is that sometimes the error messages are very helpful and very descriptive and tell you exactly where the problem is. Sometimes they don't. You have to do a little bit of trial and error or hunting and searching to figure out how to fix the error. But the point is that every time you make an error, the compiler will find it and it will flag an error or signal an error, letting you know that something's wrong with the program and you're going to have to fix that error somehow. There's a lot more we can say about errors and how they occur and how to fix them, but at this beginning stage, it was important just to show you some very basics about how the error messaging system works and how to track down some of these simple errors. As we go through the course, we'll encounter more complex errors and we'll talk about how to find and fix them. In the next lesson, we're going to work an exercise with the Hello World program to end the chapter. We're going to end this chapter with a very short exercise to demonstrate some modifications we can make to the Hello World program. There's not a lot we can do because this is such a short and fairly simple program, and also I want to save some of the technical details of things to other chapters where they're more appropriate. But let me just explain how we can modify this program to change not so much the way Hello World looks, but how to display it. One thing we could do is only print one part of the phrase per line. So we can write system out print to print hello, and then we can add system out print line world on a separate line. Save the program, bring our DOS window up, clear the screen, javac hello world.java, and then java hello world. And so notice that we get the same result even though we split the phrase into two lines. And you have to be careful when you do that, because if you put print line for both of these, what you're going to end up with is hello on one line and world on the other. Let's compile that program again, and then let's run it. So you see that print line always, after it prints its argument or the string or any data, it doesn't have to necessarily be a string, will automatically drop down to the next line before it prints the next piece of data. Be careful about using print line like that. Something else we can do, and this will be our last modification, is split the strings up into two pieces, like this, using something called the concatenation operator, which looks just like the plus sign, because it is a plus sign. So let's compile and run that program. So first we save. Let's clear the screen, and we'll compile it, and then run it. And that's probably enough for this one exercise. So in this chapter, we've learned how to create a program, entering it into the text editor and saving it, then compiling and running, and then we've also seen how to work with errors that occur, and then I've shown you variations of how to print data to the screen. In the next chapter, we're going to begin getting into the nuts and bolts of Java by talking about data types and variables.